Oh, hi there. So, sorry if my face is still a bit messed up from my previous video, but yeah, as you can see by the title, I want to talk a bit about my crying and how that is, for me, that is sort of the autistic meltdown, and it really expresses itself in a way that I cry, not really bawling typically, but just tears streaming down my face. I can't stop it. So embarrassing. Now, if you're a young autist and you're watching this, and you might have something like that yourself, where sometimes you just act in a way that's socially inappropriate and you can't help it and you can't stop it. Good news is the most stressful social situations that you can't handle, they really happen in childhood and teenage years and young adult. Then you kind of learn the ropes, and also people treat you much nicer. Like I found that in the corporate environment, nobody makes you cry or stresses you out that much. Few environments are so toxic that they would trigger a meltdown, in my experience, simply because if you're a valuable employee, if there was a manager who would constantly upset people or be consciously mean or something, then that manager would not last long in their position, because once you've gained some experience, if you have some education that makes you valuable to the company, then the company will try to keep you. And that has been my experience. So while I cried a ton in school, and a bit later in corporate life, very rarely. Now, it only takes crying once and you're kind of, off the track where anybody would consider you for project management or something. But, that's a whole different story. And I was still making a great living, and, was feeling very great in my career. Now, all right, so back to my early years, though. And maybe before that, I should also mention, in relationships, it also happens. And it still happens, in my 30s and 40s. And it's so important not to, when you realize you're autistic, not to hold yourself to neurotypical standards. Like I suffered so much because I read in like Cosmopolitan or advice books, don't go to bed before making up with your partner, don't go to bed angry. And I was always like, if there is a stressful discussion, if I'm very, very upset, if I cry and I can't stop, I just have to remove myself from the situation. And it takes me hours, and if it's a big conflict, it might take me even days to get to the point where I can sit maybe down and have a more rational conversation without the crying. But I've suffered so much, always thinking, what's wrong with me? Why do I cry so easily? And never made the connection that I might not be neurotypical. I remember actually, I must have been about 4 years old, because I was actually enrolled in school, in regular school early as a gifted child, like at age 5. And I remember one day when I was in kindergarten, my mom picked me up and she said, "You have to stop crying all the time. That's not good." And I was like, I sat in the backseat of the car. I said, I can't help it, Mom. And she said, then you must be sick. And I remember sitting there and feeling, I guess I am sick, because no other kid is like crying all the time and in a way where they can't stop it. And that was the first inkling where I really realized what a big problem that was. And then in elementary school, I remembered in music class there was a teacher whose favorite song was like about the onions and you peel like the layers. That was back in Germany in the 70s. I've reached my 50s now, so that was a long time ago. But she loved that song about the onions and how it makes you cry and you peel back the layers. And I was crying still so much in school, and I was feeling so self-conscious about it that just she would play the first, chords of the song, and I would just, tears would start running because I just felt so embarrassed. And then I was kind of, oh, the song is about crying, so now I feel so horrible about my crying that I start crying. And good thing I was like the Streber, I was like that straight A student who sits in the front row, so maybe the other kids couldn't tell that easily that I was crying, and I was trying like to hide it. But yeah, like when I start crying, tears just stream down my face and I can't stop it, and it's bad. But that was a long time ago, and I'm so glad that there's now a lot more awareness about autism, because it was like unknown when I grew up. Even in my teenage years, nobody was talking about autism. I can't even blame my parents maybe that much, or the teachers, or anybody, because there was just nobody had any clue. And I was clearly struggling in some ways while making great grades. And I'm so glad that kids like me, probably parents will be much more likely to ask, hey, could there be something where my child has something where they need support? To me it was like, suck it up, stop crying. Du hast zu nah am Wasser gebaut. Like Germans say, this person built too close to the water, means they cry easily. And it was kind of just a thing where you think it's just a character trait. And yeah, that's how I lived most of my life. And I mentioned in the other video, I realized I'm on the spectrum myself only recently, and this was definitely, it was a trigger when I took a job where I was often very, very under stress and uncomfortable, particularly through travel. Like if I'm in my comfortable environment, if there's no relationship argument, and IT projects can be stressful, but they're often good stress, so I don't really cry. But when the travel schedule kicked in and I was traveling a bunch, I had this thing where there was nothing like in particular wrong, but I would stop crying and couldn't stop, which is terrible, but it's very hard to disguise. But I had these workshops during the day that I had to attend or hold, and talk a lot and socialize a lot during lunch too. And then in the evening there was more socializing with dinner. And I remember there was one dinner I was getting ready, and I started crying like crazy. So okay, clean off my makeup, take another shower, put on clothes again, put on fresh makeup again. Tears were streaming down my face, and I enjoyed those dinners. They were fun. I loved my coworkers. I had the best boss. That was like at the team outing, multi-day team outing. So so there wasn't anything to cry about, but I was just so stressed, and I always had to be on socially, and it takes so much out of me. And I didn't even realize like many people with autism, I mean, it becomes second nature to us, but it is a lot more effort for us to just interact with people and not slip, not just to come across as perfectly, socially adept, charming. And I can be all these things. Give me a long break, let me rest. And I love going out. I can be, I love shop talking when it comes to my job, cloud development, web development. I love talking about all the aspects and security, but stress me out a lot through external circumstances like travel, like just socializing a lot, like constantly talking, and I turn into the more autistic person where I lose all my confidence. I mumble to a spot on the floor. I don't look people in the eye, or I forget to do that. I get very insecure, and I often feel like tears well up maybe a little bit, and to some degree I can suppress it, but in the most stressful situations I can't. So it almost feels like such a relief that this little 4-year-old girl who was just wondering, why am I crying, can't stop, and the other people don't have it, to sort of have the answer now feels like such a relief. And I used to beat myself up so much because I put so much effort, like in my career, just learning all these things, and trying to be at my best every single day, and working a lot of overtime. And then I always spoil it because after like months there might be a stressful situation where I have to duck out of a meeting because I feel my face getting flush, or where I cry in my cubicle or in my boss's office. And at that point, it's over. You're not gonna make it to project lead or anything, and it has really hurt my career. And very often I was kind of mad at myself that I couldn't get a grip. And it's such a relief now to realize, hey, I can just be proud of my accomplishments, and just the crying is just it's just something I can't help. And I just hope that maybe as society learns more, that there will be better ways to accommodate people who maybe are slightly autistic, and you can throw at them anything you can throw at a normal person, except maybe don't force them to socialize too much, don't expect too much there. Accommodations that way, where right now you can't get it, and you can't even like ask for it. Like, there's really no way easily. And I'm not working right now. I do need a job again sooner or later, and I'm still mulling over how I could ask for it's tough, because you don't want to put right on your LinkedIn, I'm on the spectrum, and you can't give me too many meetings or expect me to socialize too much, because at that point, who would hire you? But I do want to find a way where maybe I can maybe where a company would understand a little bit how I can bring so much to the table, but there are certain things where I just need a little bit accommodation. And my hope really is for the future that there will be more accommodation of that sort, for generations after me, for non-neurotypicals. Because it's such a, it's so easy to just blow it off as just, oh, this person is just too sensitive or cries easily. I think the difficult thing about autism is, people with autism do a lot of the exact same things that neurotypical people do. They just do it to a larger degree, or, in more inappropriate situations. And it's hard to distinguish one from the other. But I'm in a sense glad that my meltdowns express themselves as crying, because every now and then I see these we've all seen the clips of Karens having meltdowns in Victoria's Secrets or in the grocery store, and it's kind of amazing to me how rarely somebody then comments, oh, this person might have autism. It's always like, oh, this woman just has completely lost it and she's so horrible or whatever. And I feel some compassion there, because, you know, what if an autistic person, what if a meltdown expresses itself like as extreme anger or something? Then, you know, it wasn't rational for me to cry in a lot of situations. In the same way, it can be not rational for a woman to completely lose it and get super angry and scream and shout. But that's maybe a topic for another video, how little awareness there is for autistic traits in our society. But yeah, so just wanted to talk about that. And the crying certainly was so interesting to me when I realized it was a symptom of an autistic meltdown, because before I realized I was on the spectrum, a meltdown sounds like, you know, bawling, shouting, being loud, and that's just not the case with me. I just start crying and the tears stream down my face, and I can't really talk, and that's it, you know. So kind of interesting that a meltdown could be like that. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you have like a weird way where you realize maybe this is a autistic meltdown situation. But yeah, I'm going to talk about some of the topics that I touched upon here in some other videos. Gonna wrap it up here, and yeah, thank you for listening. Bye.